Welcome. This is Marnie. I'm here and we're going to have a session today with Kelly Taubert, and we're going to be talking about how to lead and host kingdom events. It's Women's Ministry Event Planner Training. Welcome to you, Kelly.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I really am.
I'm excited to have you here, and this is such a great topic. As Christian women speakers, we are out and about at events all the time. We get to
Yes.
see a lot of things from the
Okay.
speaker side of things, but then you also love to help leaders be kingdom minded. And so we're kind of combining all that today here. So welcome.
Definitely. In fact, it's one of those things that, you feel like God something on your heart and you step out to do it, but you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You're just looking at and I just it's just things have evolved and I'm asked about it a lot. So I'm glad to get on here and just tell people because it's not as hard as it looks. It's not as hard as it seems.
Yeah. And there's some insider strategies that are just going to help you. We're
Oh,
going to
yes,
help you. We're
definitely.
going to help you.
You gotta have those for sure.
So you say what to start with, and it isn't a plan.
No. So one of the things, so really it started with me just saying yes to God after I wrote my book. So I felt it was one of the first times I heard God speak to my heart, and he just wanted me to write a book. And the title was Let God's Light Shine Through You. And so he even gave me the title of the book. And I know I had never heard from God before, that I know he's always been speaking to me, but that was like my first time to really, and I remember looking at my husband and saying, I think God just told me to write a book, but I don't like writing books. So I knew it had to come from, it's not coming from me.
Yeah.
So I wrote the book. And so after I wrote the book, I had women reaching out to me. They were always reaching out to me, just going through things like just negative things they were going through in their life. And I just decided to do a women's conference, and I named it the Shine Women's Conference because of the book, Let God's Light Shine Through You. And so that's what we called it, was Shine. And the whole purpose was for all women to come together, because maybe their light's been dimmed, just through life, just hard times you faced. And it's just getting your light back again. And I just wanted that. I had this passion in my heart for that because I could see that they were just bogged down by so many things. So I started out to do the conference. Of course, I always do it through rose-colored glasses. I always think everything's just going to be so easy. But I've learned some little tips and tricks along the way. And so that's what I just kind of wanted to share. So it just really starts with that yes and moving in the right direction. That's what I think.
I love that. And over the past many years, God has worked with me on saying yes to him every single time. And I have found, and some of you maybe can relate to this, that the painful point, the most pain does not come after you say the yes. The pain comes between the ask and saying the yes.
Oh, yes,
The
definitely.
part where we're kind of fighting, saying, I don't really think this is God, or I don't think I'm the person, or I don't think I can do this. I'm not enough, won't have enough, can't be enough, whatever. And
Yes.
it's after we say yes, that's when things start working.
Yes, because he's just waiting on us. And I say this all the time, like, I'm in my 50s, so I've waited all this time in my life to start this part of my life. But I could have just stayed on the couch watching Netflix and doing nothing,
Right.
or try to expand God's kingdom. And that's what's really happened. And as soon as I said yes to that and started planning the events, it's just unbelievable how God has worked in my life. It's just been crazy.
There is so much life left after 50.
Oh, there is. I've learned that now. I just wish I would have started earlier because I could have
Right.
helped so many more people,
Right.
but this is the season and this is when
Yes.
he wanted me to do it. So
And you're saying yes. So that's so cool. So
that's
cool.
right. Yeah.
All right. So when you're going to plan, especially a major event, you need a team.
Right.
And I'd love you to just give us a few insights on how to start doing that.
So one of the things is when I started out planning this, the first thing you look to is your church. Because I'm like, these are people that are like-minded, that think like me, and these are just this is how I personally started. So I had people that I shared my vision with, and I scheduled a meeting. So the first place we had it was at a Holiday Inn. We had it there. It was just in our area, and she laughs at me because the lady that was over the event at Holiday Inn, I went and I said, I don't know how many people are going to show up. There might be 100, hopefully, and most of those are my family. I hope. And she's like, oh my goodness. I said, you have no idea. And that's one of the things about an event. You don't know who's going to show up, or, you got to make sure, that they find out about it. But it was just something that as another leap of faith. And so I went to her to start planning it. And then I had a meeting with all these girls that were going to volunteer, that went to my church, and also close friends that all shared a like-minded vision. And we all met, and I had a PowerPoint presentation, and I just brought it and showed them the vision. And I think that's so important because, we had never had anything like this in our area, because our event, it's going to be all churches, all women. Even if you don't even have a church, we want you to be there, So usually in our area, it was more just like your church, and you had an event for your church. So this was going to be all women. And so I did a PowerPoint presentation that I created in Canva. I know we've all worked in that. And I just shared my vision. And we came up with a Bible verse, a theme for the conference. And I had a couple that I had in mind, but I let everybody vote on it. And it kind of brought everybody together to see the vision and vote on it. And it was, it really brought everybody together. And so we chose a Bible verse. It's about God's plan for your life. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Yeah. Before you were born, I set you apart. So that was our theme, and it was God's plan for your life. So that was kind of like bringing everybody together. I wanted to mention something recently we've done is we did a photo. So everybody and keep in mind, everybody's volunteering their time, just like I am. We're all just volunteering, not wanting to make money, just trying to make an impact. And so what I did is I found a lady that was a photographer, and she did a composite photo. Like, everybody has different schedules, so we couldn't be there at one time, but she adding everyone in as we could all go to take pictures. And it made us all this big team together. So it's just all the teamwork, I think, is real important, so for that.
I love that. I'm going to follow. I love how you allowed them to have input, but you came and cast the vision. Right. And I think that's very important as a leader. It's different if you don't know where God's calling you and he's calling you to do something and he says, get some people together and brainstorm. That's totally different. But if you really have a clear call, don't go in as if you don't. It's super important for you to communicate that. I love that you brought that up.
Yes, because it's so true. And once they see it, once you give them a couple options, it's easier to decide on something together. And it just, I don't know, I think it brought us all together.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
it really did. It really was a great, and I have a great team. So because of that, everybody, especially day of, everybody's hands on deck helping, but they knew that vision the whole way through.
Love that. Love that so much. So important. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. That's great. And then you talk a lot about moments that matter, creating. Yes. You did it for your team first. You had a PowerPoint, but then you included them to make them feel like a part of the team right away by letting them vote and having their input there. Now, as far as the conference itself goes.
Yes. So as far as the conference itself, there's something that you have to understand, that a lot of women have never even been to a really nice event. They've never been to something like that. I think a lot of us take it for granted because maybe we go to nice weddings and we go to nice events, but some people have never been to anything like that. And so my heart for this was to create something that made them feel like they had a true VIP experience from the time they walked in the door, just that they really felt that. And so one of the things is just details. It's all in the details. And you can do it with not as much money if you have budget, because you may not have a big budget at first when you start. But what I did was, first of all, prayed over everything we did. Yeah, that was one of my things. Before every step that I did, I prayed over it. But one thing was I made cards that was like a message from me. And I put a Bible verse, random Bible verses for each woman. And had it sitting at their space when they got there. And it was everybody had a different Bible verse, and it just seemed like it really hit home when they got there, because it's almost like it was speaking directly to them.
Right.
The Bible verse, when they got there. So that was a small detail. Of course, we got them a bag with a journal and a pen when they first walk in, because it said the Shine Women's Conference, and they were able to take notes for, the event. But it's just all these little details that they just felt, it just makes you feel special, when you come in, and it doesn't make it feel like you're just one of the 100 people that are walking in. You know, it just made them feel special. So one of the things, so the gift giveaway, that was, and then we, throughout the day, we would give away things. So, you know, we would just maybe, you know, like all throughout the day, we would announce winners of different things. And so that kind of brings you together, you know, and it was based on their ticket. When they got their ticket, we were able to do that too. But one thing is, and this is the day of the event, everybody prayed over every chair and every table. And it just was so, you could truly feel the Holy Spirit in the room. And it really, when they walked in the doors, you could just feel it. Even my husband went through and prayed like after, and that meant so much to me. Everybody was praying. But we also, when we talk about details, we had a prayer wall. And so you could actually, we had little pink stickies on everybody's table. And you could write down something that you needed prayer for. And we let everybody go to the prayer wall, and they would just all throughout the day, they'd put their prayers up there. And we said our Shine team will pray over all of these when the event is over. So that was really powerful. And it was full of prayers, and it was so special to see that. And also my husband created 2 large wooden crosses. They were really tall crosses. And we put a basket at the base of it. And it was like you could lay your burdens down at the foot of the cross. And we played a song, and everybody went forward and just put their burdens, you know, placed their burdens down, and we prayed over those as well. But those are like the little details that that really, I think, were meant a lot, because I'll tell you more about it, how we found out what people thought about it later. But also we had women give their testimonies. So whenever, so one of the things we did was create a Facebook group. And that was so important. And I wanted to share that here, because creating that Facebook group and getting that engagement is as good advertisement as you can get, because you create the name of your event and everybody's coming in there. And so one of the things I did is I would create a video that says, hey, we would love to hear about your testimony. You know, send it to shineconferenceteam.com and send me your testimonies. Well, I got 38 testimonies.
Wow.
From women.
Wow.
Hear their testimonies at the conference.
Beautiful.
You know? Yeah. So what I did is we drew names. So to me, I was like, we can't choose who has the better testimony. So we drew 12 names for them to give a 3-minute testimony for each woman. And we drew 12 names. Well, I accidentally drew a name that was not giving their testimony. This is an interesting story. So we put it back in there and redrew the names. And I drew the same 11 names that I had drawn before, because it was 12 people, but we drew the same 11 names. And so when we had our, you know, talk with all the testimonies, we were like, this is confirmation that God wanted to speak your testimony for sure.
No kidding. Amazing.
That helps women when they're at the conference to see someone telling their testimony, and maybe they are going through the same thing.
Yeah, I love that.
Anyway, I might be getting off what we're talking about. But
you're good. You're good. And the next point is to stay flexible. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? Elizabeth Elliot defines humility as flexibility. And I love that. I love that. So important.
Because I don't know if anybody knows this, but not everything goes the way we plan it.
Yeah.
You know, you hope it does, you want it to, but I'm telling you, things are going to change. And one thing that I said from the very beginning is I was not going to be angry, offended. I was going to try to have peace in my heart and just flow with it, because things are not going to go your way, you know, of course, as we know. And so one of the things I want to tell you is you plan things because of our budget. We had someone offer as a vendor, we're going to furnish breakfast for everyone at your Shine. So at the event, we had almost 700 women. Wow. So it was crazy, because we thought that's another thing. You don't know how many you're going to have till the ticket sales come in. So I thanked this vendor. You know, I always have a trusting heart, and they came and they did the breakfast. Well, we ran out within 20 minutes of our breakfast. Well, everyone's panicking, you know, coming up to me. And so we had some of the men that were there running to the donut shop, getting donuts, bringing them there to get as much as we could food. But it's just like, that's what I'm just saying. Like, you can't, and that was during the event. So you cannot get stressed out.
Right.
And it all worked out. Everybody got their food, their donuts, and it was okay. But that's the little things that could happen, that if you panic, then you won't even be able to, you know, concentrate on the speech or talk that you're wanting to give, because you're so worked up by what just happened. I just thought I'd throw that out there. That was one of our fiasco events that happened. You know,
For the first 10 years of womenspeakers.com, I didn't take any speaking engagements unless they were pinch hit, which means that at the very last minute, the speaker had a heart attack. Someone in
Oh,
their family died. Something major happened. And then I would fly in and pinch hit for those events. And I did that for 10 years. So
wow.
when you're saying that things don't always go as planned, I mean, sometimes the biggest parts don't go as planned.
Right.
But
Exactly.
what I saw in all of those situations was that God showed up, and the tenderness of the hearts in a situation when something
Oh,
tragic has
yeah.
happened like that to the speaker they were excited to hear from. Their
Yes.
hearts were so wide open, and God worked so greatly. Whatever goes wrong, I love this phrase, everything that comes into my life, the enemy wants to use to destroy. But
Oh,
everything that comes into my life, God wants to use for good. And so
that's
we can just say, I'm just going to choose to be the first person who flips something that looks negative for something that's positive and give God all the glory. I love, love, love
I
that.
love that. I
Yeah.
absolutely do. And and as for your team, whoever's helping you with the event, it helps
Mhm.
to see you not panicking,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
stressing out. It's just like,
Mhm.
okay, well, because everybody just
Right.
handles it in stride because
Right.
they know that that's just part of it. And
Yep.
that's what I love that. And so one of the things when you said staying flexible is I had women reach out to me that couldn't afford a ticket
Mhm.
all leading up to the event. And so my heart was always, if they cannot afford a ticket, I still want them to be there.
Mhm.
And
Right.
so if they're going to reach out to me and tell me they can't afford it, that's hard
Yeah.
on any woman to
Right.
do. And
Right.
so I would always allow them just to come to the event, and we
Mhm.
treated them just like a VIP, just like they were
Yep.
there. And there's something about that because God always provided. I had a
Mhm.
lady that had a women's home, and there was a lot of them there that couldn't afford it. And so one day I was getting into the shower, and I was thinking, okay, how can I make this a discounted ticket for this
Yeah.
group? Because you start out with a low budget when you do an
Right.
event usually, and
Right.
I heard God say, "Give them the tickets, and I'll take care of the rest." It was just a low voice, and I was like, okay. So I just told her, "We'll take care of your table."
Yep.
And literally, I had a Bible study group randomly reach out to me
Yep.
and offer to pay for a full table of women.
Yep.
He
Yep.
did take care of it. He always takes
He
care of
always
things,
does.
especially if
Mhm.
you're doing stuff for his will like this. He's going to take care of it, even though it seems, stressful in your mind when you're going through it, at the time.
I have this saying that I felt like when God's asking me to do big stuff like that and I don't know how it's going to go or where the money's coming from or whatever, I
Yes.
feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, kind of hanging out. My body's straight out. The only thing touching the cliff are the arch of my feet. And I know I've got a harness on, but
Right.
most importantly, I know who's holding the harness
That is a great way to put it.
because
Because
it feels so scary.
it is scary, especially when you're planning lots of events,
Yes.
you
Or
know,
big
and
ones. Yeah.
or big one and big events
Mhm.
because you don't number 1, you don't know where the money's coming from, and
Right.
number 2, you don't know how many people are gonna show up
Yeah.
or how much food you need,
Right.
but you just have to go on faith. And so one
Mhm.
of the Bible verses with that 2 Corinthians 9:8, it just was like, God will generously provide all that you need,
Yes.
then
Yep.
you will always have everything you need. And that is one that I just always told throughout the whole time. That's what I kept saying. You're going to have everything you need and plenty left over to share with everyone else. That's the mindset you have to have, and also imagination, because God gives you the desires of your heart. And if you can imagine that room filled with women that
Mhm.
are ready to hear from
Yeah.
God, and God will make it happen.
Yeah.
And I'm truly, I have more faith now than I ever had after these events. So
So great. Let's talk about publicity a little bit. Of course,
yes.
word of mouth is always going to be
Oh
your
yeah.
number one way to
Oh, that's true.
personally invite. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think the
Yeah.
best promotion is yourself and your team. I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah.
that's gonna, word of
Absolutely.
mouth because they trust those
Mhm.
people. They
Yeah.
trust their word, and
Yeah.
that's the best. We had they have news stations. All the news stations in your area. I'm just telling
Mhm.
women here. You think, oh, that seems so far fetched. No, they're looking for
Local events.
local
Yep.
events, and they'll
Mhm.
have you on a noon show
Yep.
or something like that. And
Yep.
that's a great way to get yourself out there, get your event out there. The Facebook group page that I mentioned earlier, that was a really big, and I always ran Facebook ads, and you can do them for like $30, $50,
Yeah.
and you can pick your audience, like your local area where you're from. And that's what I would do, pick the certain cities that were near me,
Yeah.
and run those ads. And that gets it out there on social media for people to see. I was new to TikTok, but TikTok, Facebook, they have those. So I would run those. And one thing we did that was really neat was our team, we had them do a quick little video. Like, I'm very excited for the Shine conference. I'm on the Shine team, and we would love for you to join us. Like, that was really, a great, because then people would, oh, that's so-and-so. And then they'd recognize them and want to sit near their table. And so those are things that we did for promotion.
I love
it was
that.
real important. Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Okay. What is the glue that holds partnerships together?
Okay. So I truly believe that, we had vendors for shopping also, because we thought, give it the whole experience. You can shop during lunch and then come back to the event. And so I think having your speakers and your sponsors, your vendors, all like family, they all feel like they're part of it. And that's going to be the glue that sticks you, because they're going to be there for you when problems arise or things come up, and help handle those things with other vendors or, things like that. So I feel like that's really the glue. Also, on your team, you may need to get a couple of people that are not volunteer, because, they all have jobs. Everybody they're doing this because they're with your vision and they want to expand God's kingdom. But I've learned that, maybe someone to help you with sponsorships and giving them a percentage of the sponsorship. That's one way. If you don't have the money to pay them, you can give them a percentage of whatever sponsorship. That was one way. And maybe a media and marketing person, that just can help you, that's really good at those things, because a lot of people are not good at that.
Right.
Working Canva and marketing and those kind of things.
Absolutely.
So that's real important, because you need to market your event for sure. And then I had a girl that did my website. Your website is real important. That's where they're all going to go to get their tickets, find out about things. And I think it's good that it's professional and it looks professional looking. And you may have to do that,
Yeah, I like that you've just given everybody permission to have a mix of paid and free help. And I think that just to pray through that and to say, God, what's here. I just keep asking, it's so interesting too. It takes faith. You have to ask and receive. And sometimes you have to step out by faith and say, I don't see where this money's coming from for this person, but I trust you that this is you talking to me.
Right.
And then maybe you were thinking you were going to pay somebody else a whole bunch of stuff. And then maybe they volunteer to bring the breakfast, at no cost.
Right. Exactly. And honestly, I want to share, I was looking for a media marketing person, and I prayed about it really hard that morning, and reached out to someone that gave me a lady's name. And I told her, we're a nonprofit. We're new to this. And she said, well, guess what? She goes, I will do your marketing if you'll promote my business.
Lovely.
And so it's just like, there are people that will do that to help you until you get going. And that's
absolutely.
And I think God provides that for you too.
He does.
So
all right, what should we aim for? And you go, it's not perfection.
Not perfection for sure. But I want to point out, it's not about impressing people. I just feel like that's so important. It's not about you getting up on stage and everybody looking at you. I think I've seen that a lot in things, and it's not about that. It's when you give God the glory, that He's the one that brought this here and created this event, because as long as you're walking in God's will and your heart's in the right place, He will bless your event. And, I just think sometimes we have to work really hard, maybe when in our prayer time in the morning, or just make sure, God, is my heart right? I don't want to be doing this for the wrong reason. And when you are, that's when I just said He'll bless you, because when you're in the right place, because you see His blessings. It's almost like He opens up the floodgates for you and just blesses your event, So I think that's so important, because perfection puts pressure on you, and because I'm one like that. I want things to go well and perfect.
Right.
And but obedience puts the power in God's hands.
Yes, right. There we go.
And that's it's like we want to control everything, but you got to let God control it. And I know that's easier said than done, but he just kind of maps it out little by little. And these are things I've learned. It took me a while to learn those things, but I learned it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What is the power in a feedback form?
So what I did is I decided after the last event, I was like, I really want to get feedback from the audience that was there. What could get better? What could go better? What would be different? And then also from my team. So we did both, and I got really good feedback. And you just can't be disappointed when you hear, you just have to know this is going to make our next event even better. And so one of the ways I always felt like if it went extra long, they felt like they were getting their full day's worth. And really a lot of women really were okay if we ended it at 4:30. Like you started at 9 or 8:30 and it was over by 4:30 or 5, because they could go home for dinner.
Right.
They could go home to their families. And so it's something I learned, because I thought, well, man, they really want to go to 6:30 or 7 because that'll be even better. But no, they had a full day and they got everything they needed out of it and they were good. So those are just things you learn, that you just kind of know what your audience really wants.
Yeah.
And I just think across the board. And then also your team, what strengths do you have? I want to know what are their gifts God gave them that they're really looking for. And so I took those notes down too through the survey. And I think those are important if you are running a team and running an event, for sure. So definitely.
Yeah. And I think being open for suggestions for next year, even though you can't possibly do them all, just be open to it, because people in the moment, they have great ideas.
Oh, they do.
Sometimes just a small tweak that could make a huge difference.
Yeah. So one of the things we did is we brought remember the prayer wall, and you're laying the burdens down. We all got together afterwards and prayed over that together. And then we started talking about the next event and really got good feedback from everyone, on the check-in table, the merchandise table, what all we need to do differently, because sometimes it's just all at one time and everybody's, running around. So we learned some different ways that we could handle it, for sure. So that's good.
Yeah, great. You talk about celebrating afterwards.
Yes. So, I just feel like it's so important to just be grateful in the end, because, I don't know. I love that Philippians 4:6, where he said, don't worry about anything, instead pray about everything. I love that because I really think, God, if you thank God for everything, it's just, so I want you to think about something in that Bible verse. Okay. So don't worry about anything. Let's see if I can read it and really get it. Instead, pray about everything, tell God what you need, and thank him for all he's done. And so with that, so if you catch that, he said, thank him while you pray. Because when you thank him while you pray, it opens up that spiritual world. It opens up all the blessings he wants to give you when you're thankful. And so that's what all of our team, the Shine team, we're grateful because we saw what God did, and we've seen the doors that he'll open for future events in the future. And so it's really been a blessing, but I feel like that's so important, the gratefulness, and don't worry about the next event and how you're going to do it. Just know that God will be there for you. If he was just like he was there for the last one, you just have to trust.
Love that.
For sure.
Oh, so good. So much great stuff.
I know.
Oh, this is wonderful. Well, you guys want to totally check out Shine, and you can do that over at Kelly's website, www.kellytaubertministries.com. And when they go over there, what are they going to find?
So when you go to the website, one of the things we're doing when you talk about gratefulness and thankfulness, we're doing a gala, a Shine Gala. It's a fundraiser, but it's just really for thanking God and showing all the things that he did at the conference. And everybody comes together, and with the purchase of their ticket, that is allowing women at the next event to attend at a cheaper ticket price. Great. Because if you do the fundraiser, you can put that down on the next event. So that's really the goal for that. So you'll see the information about the gala. You're going to see us that we're going to go to Wichita Falls, Texas. That's our next event on October 18th. And so we've got a great plan for that. We've got a worship team coming from Nashville, Tennessee. We've just got a lot of good planning, and you'll see all the information on that. And then it's also going to be at Ford Park in Beaumont, Texas, which is a huge event, February 7th, 2026. So we've got these events, and God's just opening doors. Wichita Falls reached out to us.
Wow.
About the event, and the city sponsoring it.
Wow.
So it's just amazing
Beautiful.
what God's doing. It really is.
Beautiful. So, so fun. And of course, you're available to speak at women's events
Oh, yes.
also. So check
I
that
love
out.
speaking, definitely. Yeah.
Aw. Well, thanks again for being here, Kelly.
Okay. Thank you so much. I loved it.
And
Appreciate
thanks,
it.
you guys, for joining us. So fun to have you with us. I hope you go check out Kelly's website, and we'll see you next time on Marnie's Friends. Bye bye.
Bye bye.